Alrighty, so talking about nutrition and weight management, our job is to sort of understand what some of the weight management concerns are, sort of how that works, like how is it that like some people, lose weight when they're on a diet and other people like will do the same diet and then they don't lose weight? Like what's really at play there, right? And obviously, I'm going to talk to you guys about this again when we get to our actual weight loss course, which is like specifically all about body composition. But if we're talking about nutrition, nutrition is a very powerful, I'd say the most powerful tool that we have at our disposal when it comes to managing body composition. So we'll talk a little bit about like the significance of obesity and the methods that we use to determine that, why obesity is the way it is, what it actually means, like, are you actually at risk if you fall outside of a normal BMI range? We'll talk about how body composition is arguably much more important than that when looking at body fat percentage and things like that. And then we'll talk about energy intake, what we can do to manage that intake, what happens if we have clients who actually, have very unhealthy habits when it comes to weight loss. That can develop into sort of a disordered eating situation, which is never good. And then we'll talk about how athletes can actually gain weight in a very healthy way rather than what often happens, like where you'll see people just like, they call it dirty bulking, where they just eat everything. And it's like, did you just eat an entire bag of M&Ms? It's like, I'm on a dirty bulk, like, it's like, okay, or bear bulking, I've heard people call it, although like I've always thought that term's like kind of weird, but I get it. Like, it's where it comes from, is like bears like hibernating and stuff. But I'm like, have you ever seen like a bear, like a shit? They are muscular. Like, have you guys ever seen, before I dive in, have you like a shaved chimpanzee? They have their upper bodies are insane. Like, and you can see like very similar to us. Like, you can clearly see like, where we come from and stuff. But it's like, it's wild. You're like, I would never. And you look at them, and it's like, oh, what a cute like, monkey. It's like, no. Like, do not mess with that wild animal. All right. So anyway, we're taking a look at some of the weight management concerns. So why do people like approach us when it comes to like managing their weight? Like, why is this probably the most common goal that we deal with in the gym, right? Well, most of all, it's people who are trying to improve their overall health. A lot of people who are overweight are dealing with like health conditions that are sort of associated with that. Maybe they're trying to achieve their ideal weight. They're trying to get to a place where maybe the doctor was like, look, we want you between this number and this number. Or maybe it's to improve sports performance, right? Some people are trying to gain weight. That's what they do to certain like football players and stuff. They're trying to get them to like a certain body weight, and things like that, right? So there is like a sports performance aspect to this as well. What's up, Gabriel? We never see you in the morning. Welcome.
So what's up?
Schedule a little bit different?
I actually just woke up. That's why.
I'll take it. All right. Well, good morning. So there's a lot of different things that kind of come along with the weight management concern. So some information you guys want to get memorized. I know a lot of you guys have already seen this before, but it's just, again, it's always good to get this memorized in your head. We're going to talk about body mass index today, right? So BMI is sort of how we classify obesity. If you fall into this range to this range, then that means that you are what we'll call normal weight, or this range to this range might be overweight, or this range was obese, right? So the body mass index is a way to categorize individuals based on their height versus their weight. So this is a little bit better than basing it on somebody's poundage, right? Like, if you had somebody in there, it's like you have two people and one person weighed 180 pounds and the other person weighed 190 pounds. The assumption might be, it's like, oh, the person who weighs 190 pounds is a little overweight, right? And it's like, you don't know how tall they are. Like, the person who's like 190 could be like 6'5", like, and the person who's like 180 could be like 5'2", like, those are very, very, very different. So the BMI gets a little bit more accurate because it starts taking into account their height. However, like anything, it's still going to be, it's going to have its flaws. mostly the fact that it only takes into account your height versus your weight. It's not taking into account your age. It doesn't take into account your gender. It doesn't take into account your fat mass, muscle mass, any of that stuff. It's literally just a flat number. So I always tell people, like, look, doctors will use this as a general indicator of like body composition, but it has been misinterpreted for decades at this point. And by the way, the BMI was invented, I want to say the 17th century. In the 1830s. Okay. So not quite the 17th century, but like 1830s, it's been around since then, right? Like it's just a very simple formula. The original reason they invented the BMI is because they just wanted to look a little bit at body composition. And they wanted to look at large scale populations. So they could ask like people really quickly, what's your height, what's your age? Got it. Or what's your height, what's your weight? Cool, moving on. What's your height, what's your weight? Boom. And they could get a lot of information. And then they could just look at general demographics in like a city. And they were analyzing what parts of the city were underweight. Actually, it was about underweight at the time. So they were trying to figure out where they needed to, get more food. Very different than how we use it now, and so a lot of people think that it's directly related to how you should look and things like that, and that's not necessarily true. But the way I like to always tell people is, again, it's that bad casino situation, right? It's a bad game of roulette that none of us really want to play. We want to try to not play as much as possible, right? So roulette, you spin the ball, it tells you what number it lands on, right? And like the more places you've got bets placed, more likely you are to win. So if your BMI falls out of like range, you're putting one chip on the table on one number, right? And that's not really all that bad, to be honest, but if your BMI is outside of a normal range and your body fat percentage is outside of a normal range, well, now you got like two chips on the table. And then if your waist to hip ratio is really out of whack, right? More chips on the table, right? Like if you don't exercise regularly, if your cholesterol is out of whack, right? So we start to see like an increased risk, but like it's not meant to be, considered like the only way to look at body composition or the only way to look at health. Like I'm a pretty lanky dude, and I'm still like creeping up on the overweight section because like muscle's very heavy, and I'm not saying I'm the most muscular guy in the world, but like it's gonna take up more body weight than somebody else who might be the same height as me and even the same weight who never exercises, right? Those body mass indexes are going to be the same, but the body composition is going to be very different. So I don't put very much emphasis on this. That being said, I do need everybody in here to know how to recognize this formula if they ever ask it to you on a test, because they love to ask it to you on a test. So your body mass index is going to be your weight in kilograms divided by your height in meters squared. Now you can do this by doing your weight in pounds divided by your height in inches squared, and then whatever number you get, multiply that whole thing by 702, 703. 703. But we're not gonna you don't have to have that second formula memorized. The one I want you to kind of recognize and be able to see is weight in kilograms divided by height in meters squared. So I can just find that in an image so we can just see it and burn it into our brains, right? Kilograms divided by height in meters squared. I always like the version where they put it over. There we go. I love this one, right? So that's a really good one. Over top, right? So so now what we're going to look at is we're going to look at our BMI ranges, right? And we're trying to look to see if our clients fall within that specific range. So when we're looking at this, anything below 18.5, male, female, is going to be considered underweight. So anything below that is actually considered like unhealthy in its own capacity. I know certain bodybuilders who are, winning in shape competitions who are outside of this. And I know who are also on this side of it, different categories of bodybuilding and stuff, but that's underweight. Now, normal weight is anywhere from 18.5 to 24.9. So 18.5 to 20, just below 25, right? That's what we were trying to aim for. If you're at 25 to 29.9, that's considered overweight. So like just below 30, but just above 25. And then obese is anything greater than 30. And there's some other classifications of obese. There's just this falls as obese. This is obesity class 2. There's obesity class 3. But honestly, like the ones they want, anything above 30 is considered obese. So what they want you to have memorized, what they may test you on, is they'll say like a client has a BMI of 31, they would fall into the blank category of obesity standards. So you'd say, oh, that's above 30, so that's obese, right? That's sometimes how those questions are going to go. So there we go, right? And there's a big incidence of obesity sometimes in like certain sports where, it is a body weight specific sport. Like obesity, not very common in like combat sports, not very common in field sports, like they're very running based, right? But then you look at like heavyweight wrestling or like football players who are like linemen or things like that, and it's like suddenly, or heavyweight champions, like heavyweight combat sports, I should say. That kind of breaks what I said, but those places, like, hey, they might land in the obese category. But you look at like a 220-pound linebacker with like 8% body fat, you wouldn't consider that person to be like overweight, right? So again, there's more stuff to look at. That's why we have to do some more numbers stuff today. So we know there's a lot of diseases associated with obesity. We know that like hypertension, type 2 diabetes, coronary heart disease, arthritis can be a problem. Now, when I say arthritis, I don't mean rheumatoid arthritis, not the one that gives you like the little knobs on your joints, but the one that like just gradually wears stuff down when it gets like, beat up and impacted, right? Heavy body, more impact on the joints. Respiratory problems, the big respiratory problem we'll see is honestly something like sleep apnea, where like someone will be so heavy, their chest will have a hard time like expanding while they're sleeping because their muscles are so relaxed. So all of a sudden they'll stop breathing while they're sleeping and then they just go suddenly. Certain types of cancers, there's more tissue, right? This is it honestly is very simple to understand when it comes down to understanding like why certain types of cancers are associated with obesity. There's just more cells, there's more equipment to go wrong. It's more likely that the DNA is going to get altered. Also, there's an argument to be made that like a lifestyle of unhealthy eating, which probably caused obesity, is also the type of like foods that are going to have like chemicals and things like that that could possibly cause it. And then psychological, emotional, and social trauma is one of the risks of it being obese. Like, there's, people can be judgmental and mean, and, that can sometimes affect people in very intensely negative ways. So how do we measure body mass index? Again, weight in kilograms by meters and squared, but we also have a couple other things that we're going to look at. So when we are sort of like calculating out someone's obesity, like let's say we get a client who comes in and they fall into the overweight category, and they're like, I don't feel like I'm overweight. I'm like, and it's like, okay, well, let's take a look at some other statistics, right? So we're going to measure their height, we're going to measure their weight, we're going to use that for the BMI, but we're also going to measure their waist circumference. Now, waist circumference is a really good indicator of health. We know that abdominal fat is the most dangerous type of fat on our body, right? What's interesting is like you could take two people with very similar body fat percentages, but if you look at one of them and most of their weight is stored on their gut versus the other person where it's a little bit more evenly distributed, or maybe it's a little bit closer to their hips, that's actually a healthier version of obesity, which is why sometimes we pay attention to, is it in this one? Yeah, we'll pay attention to like the shape of like a person's body. This android shape here, this sort of apple shaped, is actually more dangerous than like a more pear-shaped person. And that seems kind of weird, but the reason we think, and we're not 100%, we don't fully understand this yet, but like the reason we think that is like the case and why that is much more risky is because there's just a lot more fats insulating all of your organs. Whereas the other version, it's like closer to your hips. That's a little bit less dangerous, right? One of the reasons why like we start to see like a correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, but like we look at a correlation between like, there's actually a higher percentage of women who are obese in this country, but there's a higher risk of heart disease amongst men. And we think that that is because, men tend to hold a lot of their excess body fat in their gut. And so that puts us at increased risk, and could be one of the things that explains like, life expectancy issues. So waist circumference is one of the other things that we're going to pay attention to. So what we're going to look for when it comes to waist circumference is we're going to measure the abdominal girth, and we're going to take that at the narrowest part of the waist. And we're going to look to see, does it fall under like specific ranges, right? So narrowest part of the waist as viewed from the front, by the way, like you're not going to take a look at somebody from the side. If it is kind of like, cresting out this way, that's how we look from the front and see like how narrow it would be for here. So like, again, in this example here, this guy here, probably, this, I would not consider his waist all the way up here. I would say it's somewhere between like here and here. If there is no narrowing, by the way, like if you look and it's like, I don't know, it's all kind of like one flat thing, which will happen in like people who are usually like a little bit in better shape. If it's just kind of flat, you just take it to the belly button. But that's the narrowest part of the waist. And what we're going to look for is basically, oh, and then here's the obesity classes I mentioned, right? We got the 18.5, 25 to 29, and then anything above 30 is obese, but there's class 1, 2, and then there's anything above 40 is considered like class 3. And that's like a medical grade, like this is where, a doctor's not going to try to prescribe like fat reduction surgery, liposuction, lap band, anything like that. They're going to try to avoid those things because like it's dangerous, like any surgery is dangerous. But when you start to get to here, this is where they'll say, hey, we should prioritize this. And they will not give you the surgery until you're below this number right here. Because if you are too heavy, which is arguably the people who need that the most, they're the unsafest people to give it to. So they can't do it. Our classifications here, right? You can see, and then here's our increased risk. Now, you take a look up here at these numbers. Ideally, the normal like waist measurements, and again, this is only looking at one measurement, similar to looking at pounds of how much somebody weighs versus looking at more data. If we look at just the waist measurement, we want it to be somewhere below 102 centimeters for men. It's about less than 40 inches. And we want it to be somewhere between less than 88 centimeters for women, or less than 35 inches. And that's where we start to see a decreased risk of certain diseases. So let's say you had a client who is overweight, but then you take their waist measurements and you notice that like, yeah, they were overweight according to the BMI, and their body fat is, but their body weight is relatively high. But if I take a look here and I see that their waist measurement is falling within like a normal healthy range, okay, that means they're probably not, the obesity thing is not anything to worry about. I mean, they're probably not going to be obese and still fall under normal range, but they could be certainly overweight. I've known, tons of clients who are overweight according to BMI, and then it freaks them out in their head and, totally makes them start like, kind of judging themselves, and they get really nervous and they're like, what do I do about being obese? And it's like, no, you're not obese, you're overweight. And then we look at other statistics, and it's like your waist is in a normal range, like your hip ratio is very good, your body fat percentage is great. It happens all the time. So again, that's something that kind of contradicts, and this is why we like having different points of data. Now, going a little bit further, because again, that's just based on, waist and things like that alone. What if somebody just, what if it's somebody, what if we're looking around and we just see that like somebody just has a wide waist, you know what I mean? Like, maybe they got, some big organs there. I don't know. Well, then we can take a look at some more data here, right? We can take a look at what's called the waist to hip ratio. So the waist to hip ratio is going to be even more accurate than just the waist measurement. And I'd say the waist to hip ratio plus the BMI is going to be a lot more accurate than just body weight or just BMI alone. Again, the more points of data you have, the more accurate your information is going to be. So the waist to hip ratio is a comparison of the waist girth to the hip girth. And this is going to indicate how our fat is sort of distributed, right? So we're going to see two primary shapes here. We're going to see sort of, we call it a gynoid shape, which is like a pear. We have an android shape, which is an apple. Which I love. I love that they throw those terms in here, by the way. Android and gynoid are science fiction terms sometimes, right? Like androids in movies, and then like a female, which you never hear that term. They just, they just call them all androids, but like female versions are called gynoids, actually. If you ever get a chance to read Philip K. Dick, he's the best sci-fi writer of all time. So anyway, so waist to hip ratios, right? We're comparing this distribution, right? So there's a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. There's a higher risk of diabetes, all of these negative diseases that we see when we fall outside of these waist to hip ratios, right? So ideally, our waist to hip ratio should be less than 0.91 for our male clients and less than 0.80 or just 0.8 for our female clients, right? So that's sort of what we're looking at. So let's say you measure a client, and I'm going to put their waist ratio here on the left, and I'll put their hip number over here, and then we'll do the math over here, right? So let's say you take someone's measurements, right? You take like a male client's measurements, right? Let's say you're working with a guy in situation 1 here, right? And his waist is, let's say, 40 inches, right? So he's got 40 inches around the stomach, right? And then we do his hip measurement, and we find that it's like, let's say, 39 inches, right? So we'll say 39, right? So what we would do to calculate that out is we would take 40 divided by 39. We divide waist to hip, waist divided by hip, which is easy to remember because your waist is on top. And we hit enter here. That's going to give us 1.02 as the number. That is a number that is greater than 0.91. That is indicating a pretty severe health risk, right? But let's say we got a female client whose waist is, let's say, 30 inches. Well, we'll say, yeah, 35 inches, right? And their hip ratio is, let's say, 41 inches, right? Let's see if I got this right. I'm trying to like imagine how these numbers are going to calculate in my head. So we take 35 divided by 41. Nope, she's still in an unhealthy range, but a little bit better than our last guy. So she's at 0.85. So let's say, actually, let's make that 43. 35 divided by 43. Oh, 0.81. God dang it. 44. There we go. 0.795. So I would say that a client, this person has 35 and 44. That ratio is showing that most of their fat is distributed on their hips, right? These are still relatively large measurements, but this is indicating that most of the body fat is held below the waist, right? And that indicates less risk. Now, again, I would argue that both the numbers that I picked would probably put somebody into like an overweight or maybe possibly even obese category. So I'm not saying that this also makes you unhealthy or does not prove that you are healthy either. It goes in both directions, right? But it does kind of show us that, there are definitely different ways that our fat is distributed. And there's definitely like different versions of obesity, right? So that is sort of our waist to hip ratio there, right? We want it to be below, and these are numbers that I don't think you'll be tested. I think there's homework questions in the program here that you'll get related to these numbers. I don't think that you'll be tested on it on your test. I haven't seen this in the study materials, but if you want to get it memorized, it's definitely not bad to have in your brain. So when we're talking about body composition, right, when we're looking at body, body composition is going to be very different from simply your body weight, right? So when I say body composition, what I mean is it's what is comprising up your body. It's your body fat, it's your muscle mass, and it's your bone mineral density. All of those things kind of coming together. Now, normally in a normal gym situation, we're not really going to be able to accurately measure bone density, but we can definitely take a look at some of these body mass numbers. So I'm going to show you guys a quick little video here about this before we kind of go through some of these math bits here. Body composition. Is that the one I want? I think of the wrong guy. I really thought that it was his video. Okay, well, we'll just kind of go through these. So let's take a look at our body composition stuff, right? So again, it's your body fat, muscle mass, and bone mineral density, right? So if we take your body is like to determine like your fat mass, right? Your fat mass is all the fat that's stored in your fat cells, but it's also your essential fat. Essential fat is like the stuff that's inside of like, making up your cell walls. That's made of fat. So like, we do not want any client to get down to like 0% body fat, right? Like that's real dangerous. That'll knock you out, right? So like sometimes people will be like, we'll calculate those numbers. We'll be like, all right, so basically you got about 38 pounds of fat on you, and they're like, okay, so I need to lose 38 pounds. Like, no, that's not what I said. So your fat mass is all of that, essential fat and non-essential fat. The non-essential fat is what's stored in what we call adipose tissue or adipocytes, aka fat cells, right? And an adipocyte is basically like a big empty sac, right? It's like you look at a cell like this. It looks like a normal cell, but it's got this extra little sac here, this little reservoir, and it just stores triglycerides in there. And there's not going to be as much mitochondria. Now, there is sort of a difference between types of fat, actually, that you can see in certain adipocytes. There is actually some highly metabolic types of fat. For instance, there's what's called brown fat. And brown fat is awesome. It's actually really good for you. It's fat cells that do store some triglycerides for energy, but it is packed to the brim with mitochondria. We don't fully understand brown fat, but we do know that we have a lot of it body like percentage wise in our bodies when we are like babies, and then that sort of transitions out as we start to get older. But for now, don't worry about like your ratio there. That's very impractical. We're just going to pay attention to our overall fat mass. And then the other numbers that we've got are what's called your fat-free mass. This is all your body weight, all of it that's not fat, right? And so that's the weight of everything. It's your skeletal system, it's your muscle, it's your bone, it's your water, all of it, right? And then there's your lean body mass. It's the one that we often calculate and figure out there, which is your body consisting of your fat-free mass plus any of the essential fats. So that's going to be leave a little bit of room there. And then bone mineral mass is sometimes associated with sometimes you'll see bone mineral mass in like certain testing situations. Like if you can do like a Dexa scan, for instance. So a Dexa scan is this like it's actually an X-ray, but it's a really low grade X-ray. Like their X-rays aren't quite as strong, which is why you'll see sometimes they don't cover up certain bits. They're not really worried about it killing off your things. But basically they're going to look at this and they're going to look to see how dense your bones are, which is kind of cool, right? And so you'll get a readout kind of like this. Oh, that's low quality. That actually might be high quality, like super high, or maybe not. But it'll tell you like your total body weight, and then it'll calculate out, yeah, here's your body mass. So it's telling you like where you're at on that chart. So it's got a lot of really good information. It also has like your bone mineral density. I don't love that readout. There's another readout that I've seen that's much better and easier to determine. Not that one either. Anyway, so that's what the DEXA test does, and those are great because like knowing your bone mineral mass one of the things that we look for, and I think Dion and David, you guys would remember this. We talked about osteoporosis in the special populations class. Just I don't think you were with us just yet. But in special populations, we talked about osteoporosis. And one of the indicators of that is somebody who just loses body weight, but then you look at their body fat composition, it's the same. It's like, why do you weigh so much less? It's their bones, right? Like they're literally, their skeletal system weighs less because there's just not as much tissue. That's not great. So that makes up our is part of our lean body mass. It takes a very specific type of test, in order to do that, right? Like that's obviously a big one. And then we've got your percent body fat. That's the amount of fat held versus the percent of your overall weight. So a lot of different ways for us to calculate this out when it comes to body fat ranges. But no matter how we calculate it out, your body fat percentage is the amount of your fat expressed as a percentage of your total body weight. So if I weigh 200 pounds and the machine tells me that while it was doing it, I have got 40 pounds of fat, right? So what that means is I would take, it is then going to do the math and say 40 divided by 200. That gives me a body fat percentage of 0.2, AKA 20%. Okay. And we can reverse those numbers, which is what I'm going to show you in just a second. So normal ranges for men, we want to be somewhere between 10 and 20% body fat. Normal ranges for women, we want to be somewhere between 18 and 28% body fat. Athletes, generally what we'll see is we'll fall outside of those normal ranges. So we'll drop that. We'll say you can get down to 5% as an athlete and still be relatively healthy. Women can get all the way down to 7%. However, women who are at a super low body fat percentage will also start to struggle with some other health risks, which we do not love. And so like, I would argue that like these numbers are a little off personally. So anyway, you'll see like different athlete ranges. I don't personally agree with these numbers, but these are not necessarily terrible. You'll also sometimes see women listed as 20 to 30% is considered healthy. I think there's some disagreement in the weightlifting community and the physiology community. I've seen this number, I think more. So this is the one I put in your notes. Obviously, since there's some disagreement, guess what? You're probably not going to be tested on it. Luckily, they don't do stuff like that, which is awesome. So there's a couple different ways to measure body fat. Like I said, there's the Dexa scan I just showed you, right? Great one thing about that is it also shows you your bone density. But there's also, that's the Dexa scan. There is also, oh shoot, I guess I have it down here. There's hydrostatic weighing or underwater weighing. This is a cool one. We know exactly how much fat weighs when it's underwater. Like I can tell you if I knew it, I could tell you exactly how much 1 pound of fat weighs when it's underwater, which is pretty cool, right? So we can use that to be like, all right, how much do you weigh on land? How much do you weigh underwater? All right, the difference is this. That means that's your body fat percentage. So that's kind of handy. This is probably, I would argue, the most accurate body fat percentage test, but it's also kind of a pain in the butt because you got to get fully submerged underwater, which means you're gonna have to wear a bathing suit. It's a whole process. Yeah, not very convenient if you ask me. There's air displacement plethysmography, which is fun to have to freaking say. And that's basically where they call that the body egg. And it's where they do this. That's not the one I was looking for. Air displacement plethysmography. Oh no, it's called the bod pod. Sorry, the egg was this old thing that 24-hour fitness used to sell. This is often how they'll test like kids. They'll do like babies with this style when they're trying to figure out their body fat percentage. But basically they're using like how much air is being displaced by your body. Fairly accurate. Honestly, it's actually not that great compared to like, it's about as accurate as like the bioelectric impedance, which is the one that we typically use. And it's so much easier to use that. So I'm like, why does this even exist? Bioelectric impedance, this is the one you're probably most familiar with. If you ever use like the handheld Omron body fat tester, they used to have these in like every freaking gym. And now they discontinued it, and so you're seeing them sell on eBay for like $300. If anybody's got one of these, you guys can get some serious money for them on eBay. I guess that one's only $50, but they're, look at that, $300. It's crazy. Amazon? No, they discontinued this. There's no way it's on Amazon unless it's a private seller. Yeah. But yeah, it's private sellers. So anyway, they used to sell these darn things, and they were great. They're really handy. They're not perfect, but basically what it does in order to like measure body fat is it sends electricity from point A to point B in your body. We know that fat is an insulator, so it slows down electricity, and water, which is found in all of your cells and definitely a lot of your muscle cells, is a conductor. So conductor makes water travel or electricity travel faster. So if we test someone's body fat and the electricity travels really slow, we know that their body fat is going to be relatively high. And if that signal travels really quickly, we know their body fat percentage is going to be low. So you'll enter your body weight, your height, your age, your gender, and all that stuff. And it'll sort of use that to dial in and estimate what your body fat percentage is. It's not perfect by any means, but it's not bad. It's pretty good, it's convenient, which is nice, and then they're starting to sell these now. You can see like they'll have these in a lot of gyms now where they have like the body fat scale with the little handheld version, so you actually do them simultaneously, and that has more points of contact, so it's thought to be a little bit more accurate, which is nice. So that is bioelectric impedance. That's the version you'll probably end up doing the most in your careers and stuff. And then there are like skin fold calipers, right? So skin fold calipers are going to measure the abdominal, or I'm sorry, not abdominal, the fat girth in different sections of the body. And there are a ton of different formulas out there. There's like 5 or 6 different formulas you can use. NASM is going to recommend that you use what's called the Dernan-Wamersley formula, or just you can call it the Dernan formula. It's a foresight method. So you can do triceps halfway between the shoulder and the elbow, biceps halfway between the shoulder and the elbow, subscapular, which is just below your scapula in the back. So if you look at like, spelled that wrong. You look at Dernan-Wamersley. So you do just below the shoulder blade. Like if your scapula's got this little point, there's a little apex right here. You go 1 to 2 centimeters below that. And then just above like the, oh, there we go. That's a really good one too. Just above the hip bones there, right? At a 45-degree angle, like 1 to 2 centimeters above that. So that's the foresight method. And basically what you do is you just measure it up in millimeters, add up the number all together, and then look at their age, look at how many millimeters it was, and it'll tell you what their body fat percentage is. Guys, the skin fold caliper is shockingly accurate. It actually works really well. I've seen it be very, very accurate before if you do it right, which is why we just take a couple tries. You do typically want to get a little bit, I will say, the one we give you in your Sochi bag is a good place to start. But if you really want to get into skin fold caliper testing, honestly, you'll want to get like a more expensive one. There's some better ones out there. These plastic ones, honestly, they're actually not bad. I really do mean it. I personally prefer these larger ones with the spring, but you'll find this guy here, which is like, this is like what? It's like $300. Yeah, $400. Those are shockingly accurate. Certain bodybuilders will have those, because it's just, they'll be doing it all day. So that is sort of how we're going to calculate out body fat percentage. So like I said, body composition, it's going to be your body mass minus your fat mass, right? So if we calculated that out, like let's say we got a client named Sally. She's 34 years old. She's 5'8". She weighs 195 pounds, and her current body fat percentage puts her at 28%. Okay, so if she's 195 pounds times 0.28. Oh, God dang it. That gives her 54.6 pounds. We'll round that up to 55, right? So we'll say she's 55 pounds of fat that she has. And then if we just take like her original body weight, 195 minus 55, that leaves us with 140. So her lean body mass is 140 and her fat mass is 55. Now, let's say you know, Joseph is training Sally for 6 weeks, and she comes in, she's like, I want to do my body fat test again. And you're like, great, let's do it. Right. She weighs now, let's say 190 pounds, right? So we'll say she weighs 190. I'm going to change this. I'll put this in red for now. So now she weighs 190, right? And her body fat percentage is glitching out my computer. Her body fat percentage is now, let's say 26%, right? So now we take 190 times 0.26. That gives us a fat mass of 49.4 pounds, right? Which we can just round up to, well, I guess we'd round down to 49, right? And then that gives us a lean body mass of 190 minus 49 of 141 pounds. So what we'd tell our client is, hey, guess what? You've lost, let's see, that's 6 pounds of fat, but you gained 1 pound of muscle based on the workout that we've been doing. That's really great. Now, let's say it goes on the flip side. She's down to 190 pounds, but let's say her body fat percentage remains at 28% in the new version, right? So she gets super stoked. She's like, I lost 5 pounds. Okay, well, let's take a look at what that means, right? So if she weighs 190 now instead of 195 times 0.28, that means she's got a fat mass of 53.2 pounds. So we're going to call that 53. And then we would say 190 minus 53, that's 137 pounds. So she has lost 2 pounds of fat. She gets soaked about her 5 pounds she's lost, but she's also lost 3 pounds of lean mass. That's not so great. So this is one of the reasons why we want to pay attention to all of these numbers, right? That's how we're going to sort of take a look at that. Does that make sense, everybody? The number stuff, the math stuff. Really not so good at teaching math, so I'm just trying to make sure y'all are getting what you need out of it. So those are our different styles of calculating stuff. Okay, so now I do have a video I do want to show. Let's take a look at this. Calculating I got it. He's got so many videos that are so similar. I think gonna go with this one. Yeah, that's the one I want. Okay. So here's a little video by Jeremy Ether. He's got a lot of videos on his channel. I think that he does a very good job of this stuff. And this is going to kind of break down how to calculate out like your energy needs. Because if we're trying to lose body fat, we're trying to maintain muscle mass, we want to be in a negative energy balance, but we want to be in a positive nitrogen balance, right? So we need to get enough protein in order to build muscle when we create that muscle damage, but we need to eat enough calories that our body has to tap into our fat stores to make up that lack of energy. So this is going to be a video about how to sort of get that right.
The fact that you've decided to click this video tells me that you know the importance of calories when it comes to dieting and losing fat, regardless of how clean your diet may be. And you likely also understand that in order for fat loss to occur, you need to be eating the right amount of calories to force your body to start burning the stored fat that you have for energy. Now this sounds simple in theory, but in practice, people often screw this up. And they screw it up by either eating too many calories to see any noticeable change, or they'll eat too few calories and end up burning their hard-earned muscle off for energy instead of fat. In today's video, I'll clear up the confusion for you and show you how to pinpoint exactly how many calories your specific body needs a day in order to maximize your fat loss while minimizing muscle loss and any other negative effects. The first step is to get a general estimate of the amount of calories you should be eating to start experiencing fat loss, which we can then refine later on. Now to get this estimate, there's an overwhelming number of different equations and calculators out there for us to choose from. But keep in mind that even with the most accurate of the equations out there, like the Catch-Mercado method for instance, they are all estimates and are not going to be 100% accurate methods for pinpointing exactly what your calorie intake should be to lose fat. Instead, they all require some fine-tuning based on how you progress, which is what we're going to do in step 2. So for now, just to avoid overcomplicating things, what I'd recommend is to instead use a very simple calculation that for most people is going to put them into a calorie deficit and is a good starting point for us to then refine. All you do is you take your body weight in pounds and you multiply that by anywhere from 10 to 13. If you're a younger, leaner, and/or more active individual, then go with the higher end of this range. If you're an older, less lean, and/or less active individual, then go with the lower end of this range. This will then give you a good estimate of the number of calories that you should start eating at per day in order to lose weight. The next step is to determine what an appropriate rate of weight loss would be based on your specific body. This is important for us to get right because if we eat too few calories and lose weight too quickly, not only is this unsustainable for most of us in the long run, but it also puts us at a greater risk for muscle loss. And we want to avoid that from happening not only because it will take away from our physiques once we do lose a bunch of weight, but also because of what happens after we diet. For example, recent 2020 research found that muscle loss when dieting is associated with an increased appetite and increased weight regain after the diet is over, leading subjects to end up in a worse position than they were before they started their diets. Meaning that for the best chances of both short-term and long-term success, maintaining your muscle mass as you diet down needs to be your priority. And we can do this by using an appropriate rate of weight loss. And a good general guideline to stick to is one recommended by the work of Dr. Helms and colleagues, which is to aim for a rate of weight loss of no more than 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week. However, taking this guideline one step further, we know based on past research that the more body fat that you have to lose, the faster you can lose fat without risking muscle loss, which is why we see a range with Dr. Helms' recommendation. So what you can do to refine and personalize this guideline a little bit more is to use a simple calculation developed by Greg Nuckols, which is to take your current estimated body fat percentage and divide that by 20. The number you get will be a more accurate percentage rate of weight loss that you'll want to aim for per week, and it's going to enable you to maximize fat loss with minimal or no muscle loss. So, for example, if you're currently at 20% body fat, you can safely lose around 1% of your body weight per week. For a 190-pound individual, this would equate to a rate of weight loss of roughly 2 pounds per week. But in another case, for a 180-pound individual at 15% body fat, using the body fat percentage divided by 20 calculation, they could safely lose around 0.75% of their body weight per week, which is a slower rate of weight loss of around 1.5 pounds per week. So just take a look at this body fat chart, estimate your current body fat, and use this simple calculation to determine what the appropriate rate of weight loss would be for you. Once you have this number down, it's time to implement it and fine-tune it with step 3, where you want to start adhering to and monitoring your daily calorie intake as well as tracking your morning body weight. We're going to use this data to fine-tune your calorie intake so it's no longer a rough estimation of what we should be eating at to lose fat, but instead much more accurate and fine-tuned to you specifically.
Get your engagement ring at jamesallen.com, because when she looks at the ring, she's gonna see you.
Out of here.
To do so, after about 4 weeks of tracking, analyze the data. Week 1 we can often dismiss since most people will lose quite a bit of water weight during this initial period of dieting. But in the following weeks, we want to look a little bit more closely at the numbers. More specifically, how has your weight changed relative to your calorie intake? For instance, let's say Steve at 15% body fat, 160 pounds, has a goal rate of weight loss of about 1 pound per week and is eating at 2,000 calories a day to try to achieve that. But after implementing this, from weeks 2 to 4, he found that his actual weight loss was slower than his target, as he only lost on average about half a pound per week. This is good, but indicates that his estimated calorie intake was just a little bit too high. So to adjust, only if he felt he could do so, he would simply drop his calories by another 10% or so to hit his target rate of weight loss a little bit more accurately. On the other hand, if Steve was losing weight too quickly, so for example 2+ pounds per week, then he'd actually want to do the opposite and increase his calories slightly just to slow this down to minimize the risk of muscle loss. And that's basically all there is to it. You put your original estimate into practice and then fine-tune this number based on how your weight progresses throughout the weeks. But also take into consideration how sustainable the calorie deficit you're adhering to is. Science aside, if your recommended rate of weight loss is 2 pounds per week, yet you just personally find this pretty difficult and too aggressive of a deficit, then slow it down. It's not a race. Stick with a rate of weight loss that's sustainable for you, as that's ultimately what's most important for long-term success. Now, with that being said, there's one all too common mistake that people make with these 3 steps that you'll want to avoid, which is attempting to eat back the calories that they burn from their workouts or from exercise in general. And this is problematic for a couple reasons. The first reason is because fitness trackers, cardio machines, and even us as humans are terrible at estimating the calories we burn through exercise, and we almost always overestimate it by at least 20%. In a typical weights workout, for example, you actually don't burn very many calories at all. Illustrating this is a 2019 paper which found that after a full body resistance training workout, male subjects on average burned an additional 160 calories during the workout, and females burned about half that, at about 80 calories. Plus an additional yet insignificant 8 calories burned from that afterburn effect, which isn't much at all, and becomes problematic because after a grueling leg day, for example, oftentimes we'll have a cheat meal or just eat everything in sight, thinking that we'll easily offset it from the calories that we burn during the big workout, which just isn't true. Cardio is a little bit better at burning calories, but still, people overestimate the calories that burn here just as bad. And secondly, the 3-step method that I previously went through, it already takes into account and averages your activity levels. Therefore, the calories that you burn from physical activity and throughout the day are already accounted for. And if you do end up losing weight too quickly because of your additional exercise, then you would just adjust this by eating more, as we discussed earlier. So just keep it simple. The only times when this would potentially apply is if you're an athlete and have a big sports event, competition, or 2-a-day training session coming up where you would burn considerably more calories than you normally would. In this case, it would be advised and recommended to bump up your intake for that day, mainly with carbs, just to fuel your performance. So, to wrap everything up for you, here is a step-by-step example of how you could start applying this right away. First, determine what your estimated calorie intake should be to lose fat based on the simple equation outlined in step 1. Then, determine what your optimal rate of weight loss should be based on the simple equation outlined in step 2. And finally, implement this while monitoring how your weight progresses throughout the weeks, and if needed, adjust your calorie intake so that your actual rate of weight loss is closer to your target. And that's pretty much all there is to it. This does, however, assume that you're tracking accurately in the first place and being consistent with your activity levels. So don't overlook those other variables as well, as they are just as important. And for a step-by-step program that shows you how to easily set up, track, and monitor
is the advertisement. So we all know how I feel about advertisements. All right, so obviously we can do a lot of big fancy math there to figure out in that equation something that NASM actually doesn't address too hard, which is like how much weight you should try to lose without like tapping into where it's like too much and probably unsustainable. So I like that video because it's got a little bit of that in step 2 there. But also like, this is just gonna kind of go to show you like, really at the end of the day, guys, when it comes to like weight loss or weight gain or whatever it happens to be, all of that is going to come down to what we call, your energy balance, right? So you are either going to be in a positive energy balance, which means that like more energy is coming in than you are burning, or you're going to be in a negative energy balance where less energy is coming in than you are burning. So energy is in the form of calories. So if I live a lifestyle that it causes me to burn 3,000 calories in a day, but I'm on a diet where I'm only consuming 2,500 calories per day, that's a difference of 500 calories. Now, there's about 3,500 calories in 1 pound of fat. So it's a pretty decent estimate to assume that if I can maintain that negative 500 calories, like again, burn 3,000, eat 2,500, got negative 500. Then my body's like, hey, you know, I got to get this 500 calories from somewhere. It's going to get it from my fat stores, right? It's going to get it from my glycogen first, for the record. But if I can keep my glycogen full by getting enough carbohydrates while I'm on this fat loss, great. Or if I just, I guess you go the keto route, lose all your glycogen, you know, in the beginning, and then you're just like, you have no glycogen to give, so it has to get into your fat stores. That also would technically work, but either way, it doesn't matter. If it's getting it from glycogen, then the food that you're consuming is going towards that and not your fat source. So it's still the same 500 calorie deficit. So if I create a 500 calorie deficit every day for 7 days in a week, that's a pound a week. That's 3,500 pounds. 3,500 pounds a week. There's 3,500 pounds in a fat. In a molecule of fat, so 3,500 or in a pound of fat. 1 pound a week, right? So that's the energy balance that we're talking about, okay? So you're either going to be in a positive energy balance, which will result in weight gain. That's a state in which the total calories that you are consuming is greater than the calories you're expending. Or you'll be in a negative energy balance where the amount of energy you're consuming is less than the amount of energy you're expending, right? And that'll be weight loss. So it's either a positive or a negative energy balance, or it is a perfect energy balance, right? You burn 3,000, you eat 3,000, your body's going to stay the same. So obviously there's some things that affect how much we consume in terms of our energy balance, right? Part of that is going to be like psychologic. Some of it's going to be social, you know, like if you're going out with friends all the time, right? You're probably going to be consuming a lot of like unhealthy foods. Some of it can be emotional. There are definitely emotional eaters out there. Like I said, when I go to the movies, I love to have like a soda, you know, that's an emotion. It makes me feel good. It's like, it makes it a whole event. It brings the whole night together for me. Love that. It's like part of the thing. So emotionally, we have a certain attachment to foods, you know. There are certain internal cues such as satiation, which is a really big one. And that's one that we can help our clients with. So satiety, guys, this is a big term you're going to see. Satiety is the level of satisfaction an individual gets in relation to their hunger. If they are not satiated, they are hungry. If they are satiated, they're going to feel full and satisfied, right? So satiety is your level of satisfaction. Low hunger is the result of satiety, right? You are satiated. So you're not feeling hungry because you're like, I don't need food, I'm good, right? Whereas hunger is the lack of satiation. And a lot of this is controlled by hormones. 2 hormones in particular, we don't talk about that often. A lot of times we talk about hormones like testosterone, estrogen, things like that, serotonin. These hormones, these are called leptin and ghrelin, G-H-R-E-L-I-N. So leptin and ghrelin are hunger hormones. So leptin is the one that actually lets you feel full. So when you consume food, like the minute you start eating food, your body will start processing and creating what we call leptin. But when you start to get full, as your blood sugar levels drop and things like that, your body will start creating what is called ghrelin. And it's just another example of how your body is very tied together. You know, I used the example talking about blood sugar the other day, where like your blood sugar drops below normal levels, you start to feel really hungry, right? That hunger feeling gets created by a separate hormone that is around called ghrelin. Here's how I like to remember those personally. I like to think of ghrelin. It's like your stomach is growling because you're hungry. That's your ghrelin, right? Your stomach is ghrelin. So ghrelin is associated with hunger. So what we want to do is we want to trick our body into creating leptin as often as possible and helping us feel full. So the ways that we can do that, and by the way, leptin and ghrelin do other things inside of your body as well. So some people are like, why not just inject people with freaking, or like take a leptin pill so you always feel full and you never need to eat. Leptin does a bunch of other stuff in your body as well. So that is muy dangerous. not safe. Not a good choice. Because I've had people be like, I'm just going to do that. No, you're not. So what we want to do is we want to trick the body into feeling full as often as possible. So I'm sure everybody in here has heard, hey, you should eat small, frequent meals throughout the day for weight loss, right? That's the classic advice. Eat tiny, small meals throughout the day. And then what people will follow that up with is they'll say it stokes your metabolism. Now, when I hear stokes your metabolism, I think, oh, it's going to help me burn more calories because your metabolism is your metabolic rate, right? That is 100% not how that works, right? You don't just burn more calories because you're eating. And they describe it in such a way where it's like, no, it's like stoking a fire with small bits of wood. It makes a big fire rather than throwing a big log on there. It takes long to burn. It's a really good analogy. And actually, it describes your hunger very, very, very well. But it does not have anything to do with your metabolism. So here's the thing. If it doesn't have anything to do with your metabolism, why the heck is it that when people eat small, frequent meals throughout the day, they will generally succeed more on a diet than a team who doesn't? Like a team who eats like a group of people who might eat like large meals struggles, and the group of people who eat small meals actually succeeds. What's the deal? If it's not my metabolism being stoked, why does it work? Well, it works because when you eat small, frequent meals throughout the day, you are making leptin consistently. Your body never gets a chance to make ghrelin. So you don't get overly hungry, you don't overeat, and you don't end up bringing more calories and screw up the math when you're trying to create that energy balance, right? So it's funny because it does stoke your satiety the way throwing small logs on a fire would. But it does not stoke your metabolism. That is a myth. It does not work that way. However, it is something that works. So that's what's so frustrating about describing that. Like, look, I'm not saying you shouldn't eat small, frequent meals. I'm not saying it's not better. I actually think it's better. But it's better not for the reason that people are selling you on it. And so, like, we just have to, I don't know, we have to tell people. All right, so now let's figure out how to run some numbers here. So there's a couple components of your metabolism every day, okay? There's a couple components that make up how many calories you are burning each day. There is your resting metabolic rate, which is the amount of energy that you burn at rest. So that's the amount of energy that you're burning by, existing, right? So it's a significant portion, right? In fact, this is usually about 70% of the amount of calories most people burn in a day. And that's just simply by having a body. It's like all the stuff to run your body, right? So that's your resting energy expenditure, right? It's like your rent, like it's like you look at all your bills and the money coming in versus the money going out. It's like, this is your rent right here. It's the biggest portion that you're spending. Hopefully somebody's like, I don't know, I'm putting a lot of money into NFTs. That's like, so that's your resting energy expenditure. Then we've got the thermic effect of food, right? So even just like processing food burns a little bit of energy. So that's the number of calories you burn by, consuming food. If you're on like a super high protein diet, actually, you're probably going to burn a little bit more energy from the thermic effect of food, which is why a lot of bodybuilders will amp up their protein closer to competition. It's not because they're trying to like maintain muscle mass. Your body can only use so much protein, but converting protein into glucose takes a little bit of energy. It's difficult. It's annoying. And so it burns some extra calories there. And if you're trying to create as big a calorie deficit as possible, that can be very handy. And then there's the thermic effect of physical activity. It's the amount of energy required to meet the demands of an activity. This is going to be higher if you're athletic and, moving around a lot, weightlifting, doing your cardio and stuff. If you're working out regularly, your physical activity will make a bigger chunk of your day. If you're not physically active, well, not so much. So those are sort of the components. It's like a little pie chart here, and that pie chart can adjust depending on how active someone is. So if we're trying to figure out how many calories to eat, like if Chris told me, I want to lose this much weight, right? I need to know how many calories he burns simply by existing. And then I need to know about like what his lifestyle looks like and how many calories he burns there. If I take those two things and I put them together, then I can come up with target calories for him to hit. It tells me he wants to gain weight, great. I go above how many I calculate. If he tells me he wants to lose weight, I go below. And if he tells me he wants to remain the same, then I equal it out. And all of this, you can see, is going to be flawed. It's all math, and theoretically, it's perfect. But obviously, like in the real world, that's not going to be the case. What's going to end up happening is somebody's like, oh yeah, no, I'm super physically active. I exercise all the time, and then they're in the gym, like reading a magazine, just like on their phone, like doing cardio. They're just kind of walking, and it's like, I did an hour of cardio a day today. It's like, did you though? I mean, that's not going to burn very much energy. And then there's the other person who's trying to gain weight. Meanwhile, all day long, when they're on this calorie deficit, they're bouncing up and down, and they're like, physically active, right? And it's like, they're going to balance things out. And so that's why sometimes like body compositions can be so hard, if you've ever been on like a weight gain program and you've been trying to put on muscle, and you just notice that you just can't, you just get stuck. That's because your body's like, hey, we got all those extra calories. Now, ideally, you were like, yeah, I gave you all those extra calories so you can make more muscle mass, right? But your body goes, we're going to make you bounce your leg all day. Or we're going to get a song stuck in your head that you're going to just like bop your head to all day. It finds ways to kind of like speed up, not your metabolism, but you. And the more you speed up, the more energy you're going to burn. And that's your body balancing itself out. We'll talk more about that later, but let's go ahead and take a look here. Yesterday, we used the REE method. I actually do think this is a pretty accurate formula in terms of resting energy expenditure. I don't love it for the activity factor section, which is where I'm going to show you like a little adjustment here. But this is going to help us kind of calculate things out. So resting energy expenditure formula. And there's other ones. There's the Harris-Benedict, which we'll use in a different class. There's the DRI method, which is actually my favorite. REE is going to look like this. So it's the amount of energy expended at rest, and then we multiply it by an activity factor. So I've done my RMR, I've done my BMR, and if I go like this, I calculate out my REE using this formula. I'm between 31 and 60. So that's going to be 11.6 times my body weight in kilograms, which is 79. So I go 11.6 times 79. And then I just add 879. Gives me 1795. That's really close. It's a little bit lower than my actual RMR. It's a little bit lower than what my resting energy expenditure actually is, but that's not far off. So it's a pretty decent formula. So let's just assume that it's perfect, right? And like I said, there's other methods out there, right? So we go back. Here's like a different formula that calculates REE, for instance. Which one did I use? We got the Harris-Benedict formula here, which is like 66.5 times 13.7 times your weight in kilograms plus 5. It's just a slightly more complicated version. So actually, you know what? Let's calculate that out. So REE originally, what was it? I'm just going to use myself as an example. 11.6 times 79 plus 879. There we go, 1795. So we'll put that one down here. Let's do the next one. I have no idea how many centimeters tall I am. It's 185. Okay. So if I were calculating on my own, it would be 66.5 plus, and then I need to do 13.7 times my weight in kilograms to 79. So that's plus 1082 plus, and then that's 5 times my height in centimeters, which was 185. So 185 times 5. That's plus another 925. And then minus 6.8 times my age. So minus 224. And take a look at that. That is within 50 calories, two totally different formulas, right? So on the left, I've got the Harris-Benedict formula. On the right, I've got the REE formula. Which one's right, guys? I've been doing this stuff for years. I don't know which one's better, right? And I could do the DRI calculator. I could do the DRI formula, which is right here. And honestly, I'm just going to cheat. I'm going to go to the website. If you type in DRI calculator, this one's actually on the government website. This is actually by the USDA. So I'm a male, 33 years old, 6'1", 175 pounds. And I would say I'm active, right? So my BMR now is considered, where the heck did you put it? Not on here. Does it not show me? This is the actual estimated caloric needs actually every day based on being active. I thought it would show it to me. Oof, good Lord. That is an ugly calculator. Anyway, the point I'm making is there really is no best formula. They're all quite good. They're all going to be within 50 to 100 calories. So what you're going to do is you're going to figure out what the actual like calculation should be. And then you're going to multiply it by an activity factor and try it out with your client. And so like if I put Dion on like a specific diet plan, I'm like, okay, let's say you burn 1,800 calories a day at resting. So 1,800 at resting. And you tell me that you're like fairly active, but not like super active. And I just take that number and I multiply it by like 1.375, which is what you're going to see like in this, just between these two here. That's going to tell you need to eat about 2,475 calories a day. So then if I'm like, all right, well, how much weight do you want to lose? And he's like, I don't know, maybe about a pound a week. Great. So we put him on, we subtract 500 from that, 1975. I'll put him on a 2,000 calorie diet, right? And then if I'm like working with him and I notice that like he's losing like a pound and a half a week, I'm like, the math said we were only supposed to lose a pound a week. You're losing a pound and a half a week. It's a little bit aggressive. I think this 2,000 calorie diet might be a little bit too low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in 100 calories. We're going to go on 2,100 next week. So we bump it up just a little bit, or we go 2,200. You know, make a small adjustment. And then all of a sudden it's like 1 pound a week. Perfect. We dialed it in, right? We got it to where we wanted to get. So that's sort of how we are going to use this math. And obviously there's macro calculations as well. I'm going to show those to you next. But so when it comes to losing weight, we want to have a combination. We don't just want to diet. We don't just want to base this all on diet alone. We want to make sure it's diet and exercise, right? We're going to be mindful of our portion sizes. That's going to ensure that if we are like aware of our portion sizes, we're not goofing up, you know? One of the other reasons, like I mentioned, like eating small meals throughout the day leaves you feeling satisfied. That's great. One of the other reasons eating small meals throughout the day actually works very well is because it ensures that you are not goofing up too badly, right? Like let's say I eat like a 300 calorie meal, but I'm off by just a little bit and I actually consume maybe 10% extra, more than I was supposed to. Add 300 calories, that's going to be like a difference of 30 extra calories that day. Not really that big a deal, you know? But if I consume like you know, like a freaking Big Mac, let's say like a 1,200 calorie meal, and I'm off by 10%, that's an additional 120 calories. And if I do that every day, 120 calories over a 7-day, you know, if I do that 7 days a week, I'm off by 840, which is a quarter of a pound. So that's why people struggle with their weight. They don't realize when they're kind of goofing up, you know? Now there are some weight loss issues out there. There's obviously good cuts. You know, people will go on like a cutting diet and things like that. It's the practice of like losing weight for a competition or something. That's fine in certain capacities, but David, I think you'd be you're going to be extremely familiar with this because you're a big combat sport guy. But like they will do really extreme things before like bodybuilding competitions and like a lot of combat sports in order to meet their specific body weight. So like what a lot of like boxers, MMA fighters and things like that will do is they'll train at a really heavy body weight so they can get as much muscle mass as possible. They'll train there. And then they got to get into their specific weight class. They'll do everything in their power to like drop weight, including like dehydrating themselves, starving themselves, and doing all kinds of things that are kind of dangerous, actually. Get down to their body weight, get weighed, and then immediately like put that weight back on before, you know, their competition and stuff. Not exactly the healthiest thing in the world. I mean, these people are in great shape. But again, it's kind of an example of like people sacrificing their body for a sport that they love. You know, a lot of people do that all the time. Sometimes it can also lead to some other issues, not weight cutting, but other issues associated. There's social anxiety related to physique, right? People just might not feel happy with the way that their body looks. It's not great. Things like anorexia or bulimia. Anorexia is going to be an extreme fear of high body weight. So it's often characterized by like a distorted body image. So we call that body dysmorphia. And then like somebody who's just there's not eating, doing everything they can to not eat. That's an anorexic person. A bulimic person is actually somewhat similar. They are also extreme. They often have a distorted body image. But rather than avoiding food, they will try to avoid food for a little long time. It will get very difficult. And then all of a sudden they will binge on like a lot of food. And what will happen is they'll get the food, they'll get the satisfaction. And then what they'll do is they'll try to purge those calories out of their body. They'll take either a diuretic, which causes it to lose it out the back end. And that flushes food before it starts to like get absorbed by the body, or they will purge it by like throwing up. So bulimia can kind of manifest itself in a lot of different ways. A lot of calories being consumed, but then none of them being absorbed. They don't give it any time to get absorbed. And then there's binge eating disorder. There's another eating disorder. This is one that is a little bit more commonly associated with like obesity. And this is like if somebody like tries to diet, they get really hungry, they struggle, they eat, they lose control, and then they eat just a ton of food all at once. And then what that causes is like an extreme amount of calories coming in. So an abnormally large amount of food. And it'll balance out where it's like you're in a calorie surplus actually overall. And it's like, I didn't eat anything all day. And it's like, you didn't eat anything all day, but you ate, 3,000 calories in one meal. Like that, and you only burn 2,200 a day. That's an excess, and that's a really dangerous like disorder as well, because it causes like, glucose levels to get out of control. A lot of times binge eating disorder will lead to diabetes and things like that. There's also anorexia athletica, which is a specific subsection of anorexia associated with like athletics. Now, this is not something that we would like classify. It's not like a disease you can catch. It's just like, it's like someone who is anorexic. It's like, are you also an athlete? Nike got in trouble a couple of years ago for, how harsh they are with their like female runners, because they based everything on like body weight. For the record, it has very little to do with athletic success. Nike should know that because they are some of the best runners in the freaking world. But they fired their head coach because he was basically encouraging his athletes to be anorexic. So eating disorders can have some really negative side effects, and it's definitely something we want to keep an eye out for in our industry. Decreased fat mass decreased fat-free mass, which means like when they lose an extreme amount of weight, they also lose a lot of muscle mass. That's going to lower your basal metabolism because the rest of your tissues don't burn as much energy as muscle. It often causes dehydration because, again, there's a lot of water in food if they're not eating food. It also causes glycogen depletion. You remember glycogen's in your body. Glycogen weighs a lot in your body, 5% of your body weight sometimes. So if you lose, if somebody's trying to lose weight and they just lower their carbs like crazy, they lose weight temporarily, but it's their glycogen. It's often why people's weight fluctuates so much every single day. It can lead to hormonal disturbances. Guys can lower their testosterone into a really negative range. Women can lower their estrogen. When women lower their estrogen so much, it can cause like a loss of their menstrual cycle, which is very dangerous, and that's not good. That often causes like bone density problems in women, because that's one of the reasons why like testosterone is so important. It's going to lead to poor performance in exercise. They're not going to be able to do well. It can cause anxiety, insomnia, rapid heart rate, and it can increase your risk of certain diseases too. Well, if you have that like mental confusion, you're trying to like play a sport or something, you're not paying attention to your body, you step the wrong way, roll your ankle. This is what we call the female athlete triad, and it's one of the most common things that we got to keep an eye out for, specifically with female clients. For the record, guys can deal with this as well, but it doesn't lead to like things like amenorrhea, for instance. So it starts with disordered eating that can lead to osteoporosis, and it can lead to, like I said, what we call amenorrhea, and that's a menstrual irregularity, and it's associated with a lot of sports and athletics and stuff. So that's why they call it the female athlete triad. Again, anorexia athletica is not necessarily a condition the same way that like anorexia can apply to anyone, but athletic is what we in our athletes in particular, we pay attention to it. There's also muscle dysmorphia, by the way, on the complete flip side to everything we have been talking about, right? There is also muscle dysmorphia, where someone has a distorted body image that results in them feeling that they are puny, right? A very famous bodybuilder who's dealt with this is like Jay Cutler, not the quarterback. But this guy here, he says that, to this day, he's not big enough. He thinks that he's like a scrawny, puny kid. Obviously not true to us, but, feels very true to him. So that's what we call muscle dysmorphia. And so, yeah, basically this is kind of it, right? It's the same thing. It's just like anorexia, right? Or any other version of body dysmorphia. So body dysmorphia can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. Body weight is a really big one. But it can sometimes be like skin conditions. Like people will see some imperfection and they'll like pick at their skin, and then eventually, they get like a skin, and it causes vicious cycle here. So when we're trying to like prevent eating disorders, right, we want to take a healthy approach when we're talking about food, right? We take the emphasis off body weight and put the emphasis on, take it off body composition. We put the emphasis on performance. We put the emphasis on health, right? Discourage the use of fad diets. Again, you don't really hear me talk about fad diets very often. I mean, like I'll mention keto because it's the big popular one right now, but I'm sure in 5 years I won't have to talk about keto anymore because it'll fall off and some new fad diet will take its place, because that's what happens. And ideally what we're going to try and do is we're going to model our healthy diets off of like, healthy behaviors that we know are effective, even if they're not necessarily effective in the short term. One of the reasons why people love keto so much is they get these massive results very quickly in the very beginning, because they're not consuming any carbohydrates, so their glycogen stores bottom through the floor. They lose weight like that because their glycogen, again, is about 5% of your body weight. So we're going to try to prevent muscle dysmorphia through like, muscle dysmorphia, body dysmorphia, any of that. We're going to try to like, find it as quick as possible. Always keep an eye out for it and make sure that your clients are taking a healthy approach to these things. We're going to try to set achievable goals rather than like unrealistic, like impossible to achieve goals. If our client is trying to gain weight, right? Okay, great. Let's do it at an appropriate like range, right? Let's not gain a bunch of body fat. Let's not, bring in a bunch of like bad foods that are going to harm us. Let's put us into two things. The only thing you need to do in order to gain weight, or gain muscle, you need two things. You need to be in a positive energy balance, so accessing calories. You need to be in a positive nitrogen balance, and equal or excess amount of protein. Now remember, more protein does not always translate to more muscle, right? But we do need to have enough protein to repair any damage that we're creating, and then maybe give us a little bit extra. So if you want to go for that 1 pound per gram of body, or 1 gram per pound of body weight per day, it's not bad. NASM's going to recommend slightly less than that. They're going to say 1.9. I'm sorry, 0.9 per pound. So we're at 175. NASM's going to recommend a minimum of 158 rather than a full 175. Why do you keep going over here? Go back over here, calculator. So that's a small difference, right? It's not huge. But this probably also isn't going to hurt me. So that's actually what I try to aim for each day. Positive nitrogen balance. And if I'm eating in excess of calories and I've got a positive energy balance as well, that's going to cause my body to go, all right, well, we got enough calories. Let's build some new body. If I don't give it enough energy, my body's going to go, all right, like we don't have enough energy. I'm certainly not going to build any new muscle because muscle burns energy, right? So when it comes to weight gain, try to eat small meals throughout the day. Again, that's actually, I will say with that one, that can sometimes be good advice for some people and bad advice for others. Sometimes people who are on weight gain diets do better on like intermittent fasting, weirdly enough, only because it's easier for them to get all of those calories all at once. But the reason we recommend small meals throughout the day is because you're just getting a little boost of nitrogen, a little boost of protein consistently throughout the day, so you never fall out of that nitrogen balance. So that's our favorite advice, but I've known people who have succeeded other ways. Drink juices or milks. It's a great way to get some calories in. I'm not saying like go crazy. Remember, my favorite dumb diet that exists is called the GOMAD diet. It's literally, it stands for the gallon of milk a day diet. This is so bad for you. But like a gallon of milk has like 2,400 calories in it. So if you're struggling to get enough calories in, this is a pretty good way to do it. I'm not saying it's healthy, right? In order to get 2,400 calories, you need 2 avocados, 3 cups of rice, a cup of mixed nuts, and 1.5 cups of like diced chicken. That's better because there's a lot of other nutrients there. Whereas this is just a lot of milk. So anyway, be careful with that. Cut back on drinking fluids at meals because it can fill up your stomach and then hard to get the food in. Calorie supplement drinks like, protein shakes are always helpful. Snacking can be very helpful. And then if you need to take a protein supplement, you can. So obviously athletes are going to be paying attention to their weight. We're going to take a look at a lot of different statistics to determine like health as related to that weight, right? Body mass index, waist to hip ratio, waist circumference measurements, all of those things come together to give us a much clearer picture of what someone's body composition is rather than just looking at freaking body weight. Now, we need to make healthy small changes that we're going to be sustainable and easy to stick to. So, we're not going to try to go on like a crash diet that limits our calories, completely and makes it very hard for us to adhere to a diet, right? If we do something like that, we might be struggling with like disordered eating, which is something you want to recognize. Now, I will say it is important for us to be able to recognize disordered eating in order to avoid it in our clients, but we do not treat disordered eating. That is considered a disease. If we think that our client is struggling with an eating disorder, we should direct them to their physician and say, hey, I think like you're struggling with this. I don't feel comfortable giving you dietary advice anymore until you speak with a medical professional. That's a hard conversation to have. I've only had to have that conversation once in my career, and it's difficult. And at first, people are going to push back really hard. At least in my situation, have a very negative response. Which is often what happens when you call people out on something they don't want to admit to themselves. But in the end, it's the right thing to do. It's also going to keep you safe in your career. You don't want to get into a situation where you are trying to medically treat someone. And then all of a sudden they get sick and they're like, well, who were you going to? A trainer. And then they come to you and it's like, are you medically trained? It's like, you are fitness trained. That's not the same as like being medically trained. So want to just be aware of that stuff and be cautious of it. Make sure you stay within your scope of practice, guys. So I got a little handout for you guys up on Canvas, and then I'm going to attach it in email today. And it's going to be a little handout that uses the DRI method for calculating energy consumption. So I just want to show you what this looks like. I want to put me over here for now. But what this looks like further than that actually, is you want to figure out your athlete's needs. This is going to help you figure out your client's macros and their energy needs. So this is going to show you a little bit how to do that math, right? So here's the things that we know. This worksheet's going to be at the front top here. It's going to demonstrate how to calculate that out. We're going to start with a sedentary individual. We'll look at a strength athlete and an endurance athlete. These are the recommended protein intakes in order to ensure that you are in a positive nitrogen balance. So this isn't based on the calories you're consuming. It's based on your body weight. It's based on how much protein is on your body. So that's 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. If you're sedentary, it's 0.4 per pound, or 1.2 to 1.7 grams per kilogram of body weight. That's anywhere from 0.5 to 0.8 per pound, or 1.2 to 1.4 per kilogram. That's 0.5 to 0.6. So we're going to use that first. That's going to tell us our protein intake. Then we need to figure out our carbohydrate intake and our fat intake. And we need to remember that there are 9 calories in a gram of fat, 4 calories in a gram of carbohydrates, and 4 calories in a gram of protein. So if we accept everything in this little box here as truth and like that these numbers are accurate, that is going to help us calculate out our numbers once we know how many calories we should consume. So let's say we've got somebody, male, 33 years old, 6'1", 175 pounds. So those are my statistics, right? And let's say I am a low active person. I do some weightlifting, but I don't burn a lot of calories. Well, my caloric needs are going to be about 2,860 calories per day. Now, let's say I want to lose a half a pound a week, right? So we know there are 3,500 calories in a pound of fat. So 3,500 and either 7 days in a week, divide that by 7, that's 500 calories per day. I want to lose half of 3,500. So I divide that by 2. I need to create a deficit of about 250 calories per day. So this number here tells me how many calories I need to eat in order to stay the same. Let's take 250 calories off that number. 2,860 minus 250. Now, if I consume 2,610 calories, I should be losing about a half a pound a week. Now all I need to do is figure out how much protein, how much carbs, and how much fat I need in order to meet these numbers. So if I look at the recommendations here, that's going to be, let's say I'm a strength athlete, right? And we'll say that's 0.8 grams per pound. So again, I'm 175 pounds times 0.8. I need 140 grams of protein per day. So let's put this in a notepad. So my grams of protein are going to be 140. I need to make this much bigger because nobody can see. So 140 grams of protein, right? And then I need to figure out my carbs intake. Now, carb is based on my calories. So earlier we said 2,610 calories. So let's say I want to eat 45% carbohydrates. So I multiply that by 0.45. That tells me 45%. That's 1,174 calories. There's 4 calories in every gram. So I divide that by 4. That's 293 grams. So 293 grams carbs. Then all I need to do is figure out what's left in order to figure out my fat intake, right? It should be somewhere between 20 and 25%. If it's not, then I need to kind of run my numbers again. But we got 140 times 4. That's 560 calories from protein. We have 293 times 4. That's going to be 1,174 calories from carbs. So I put those numbers together. That's 1,734 out of my total calorie intake of, what did I say it was? 2,860 divided by 250, or minus 250. 2,610. So 1,734 minus 2,610. That's 875 calories divided by 9. That's 97 grams, right? Now, obviously, like we did all this math manually, and that is such a pain in the butt. But I kind of wanted to show you how this works. These are my numbers, right? If I wanted to be, if I wanted to calculate out my macros, right? And that's going to come out to, let's see, let's calculate out how many calories that is. 140, 4, that's 560 calories. Right, 293 times 4, that's 1,172 calories. And then 97 times 9 is 873 calories. Put them all together to make sure that my calories are accurate. So that's 873 plus 1172. plus 560, 2605. I'm off by 5 calories. So 2610. So 2605, right? And then I can just divide these out to figure out my percentages. And it's going to fall right where I want to. 560 divided by 2605, that's 21%. Uh, 1172 divided by 2605, it's 45%. Oh my God. And 26, and then 873 by 2605 is 33%. That's actually a little high. Crap. That fat intake is a little high. I should probably drop that down. I should probably raise my carbs up and drop that fat intake down just a little bit. So, because I remember I want it to be up to about 25%. So that is how we can approach this. This is how we're going to kind of look at these numbers, right? I'd probably, if it were me, I would add 10% to the carbs and make this 55%. And I would drop this, and that would drop this down to 24%. That's probably what I would do to actually get this to be within the normal ranges. However, I have nothing against like a high fat intake. That's fine. So guys, you're not going to have to do this math manually. There are a bajillion calculators out there that are going to do that for you. Type in macro calculator, you go here, 33, 5, 6, 1, 175. Yeah, moderate. Hit calculate. Take a look here at how similar these numbers are, right? 140 instead of 160, 293 instead of 350, 75. So they got the fat drop down like I was saying I should probably do. I can go on a low fat diet if I wanted to. I don't recommend it, but I could, right? And there's that version. I can go on a low carb diet, right? It would look like that. High protein diet, it would look like that. Or I can create my own. I can slide these numbers around. So I just wanted to do, I know that that gets a little slow there, and doing math on Zoom calls is not exactly the funnest thing in the world. But I just wanted to show you that so you can see the inner workings of how these numbers are sort of calculated in the background when you are probably going to use a calculator. And by the way, actually, if we go back to screen share here, NASM has a calculator on their website. It's kind of a pain in the butt to use, actually. It's kind of convenient. I find it a little clunky personally. But again, let's say it's me, right? Male, 175 pounds, 6'1", 33 years old. Hit next. We'll say moderately active, hit next. I kept my goal the same. Let's say I want to lose 10 pounds, get down to 165. All right, next. And I want to be balanced about it, right? 30% protein, 40% carbs, 30% fat. Hit calculate. And there we go. This is my schedule, right? So by July, you're gonna lose that 10 pounds. This is it's a pretty slow rate personally, but it's not that bad, right? So if I consume about 2,700 calories a day, I will get there by July 27th. So they run all these numbers, kind of nice. What's cool about this is you can put it as a PDF, and then you can give it to your client. And it's a very professional looking handout. So that's kind of cool. But personally, I think that it's kind of clunky to use. If you don't like the results, you have to go back and redo the numbers. You got to start from scratch every time. And I'm like, ugh. And that's the macro stuff, guys. It's the micro stuff and the weight management stuff. Any questions? How are we all feeling? Joseph, David, Dion, Gabriel, Chris?
Feeling pretty good about it.
All righty.
Good.
Cool.
I feel like it's one of those things you just got to practice on.
You just got to do it. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, yeah, and we're going to see this again. You know, I'm going to help in the weight loss class. We'll look at the numbers and stuff again. But yeah, I don't need you guys to actually do any of that math. But I wanted you to kind of see like where those numbers come from. It is all just a formula, which is why they're not perfect. Like what's funny is the math is perfect, but like living a life, you're gonna goof it up. You know what I mean? So, all right, let's kill the recording.